Have you ever won a great victory, only to find yourself feeling empty afterward? You've achieved something big, but the one thing you truly long for is still missing. That's exactly where we find Abram in Genesis chapter 15. The dust has settled from a major battle. Kings have been defeated, captives have been rescued, and Abram has been hailed as a hero. But as night falls, the victory feels hollow. He stands under the quiet desert sky, not with a sense of triumph, but with the deep, lingering ache in his heart. He's rich, he's powerful, but he is childless. God's promise of a great nation feels distant, almost impossible. It's in this moment of vulnerability, in the quiet of the night, that God speaks. And what he says is so tender, so personal. Do not be afraid, Abram, I am your shield, your very great reward. This isn't a booming declaration from a distant deity. It's a whisper of comfort to a weary soul. God is saying, I see you, I know your fear. I myself am your ultimate prize. But Abram's heart is heavy, and he can't hold back his honest feelings. He replies, and you can almost hear the tremor in his voice. Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless? You have given me no children. This isn't a complaint born of rebellion. It's a cry of desperation from a man who has been waiting, and waiting, and waiting. He's pouring out his soul, laying his deepest disappointment at God's feet. It's a beautiful picture of what prayer can be, raw, honest, and completely open. How does God respond to this raw honesty? With anger, with a lecture on patience? No. God's response is one of incredible grace and breathtaking imagination. He doesn't just give Abram a verbal reassurance. He gives him an experience. He says, "Come outside, Abram." So Abram steps out of his tent. Imagine that moment. The air is cool and still. The world is dark. And then he looks up. The sky is not just sprinkled with stars. It's a brilliant, overwhelming tapestry of light. More stars than anyone could ever hope to count, scattered across the infinite blackness like diamond dust. In a world without city lights, the spectacle would have been absolutely mesmerizing. Then God speaks again, his voice resonating with the grandeur of the cosmos he created. Look up at the sky and count the stars if, indeed, you can count them. There's a gentle challenge in his voice. So shall your offspring be. Let's pause and really let that sink in. God didn't show Abram a picture of a baby. He didn't give him a timeline or a 5-step plan. He pointed to something impossibly vast, something beyond human comprehension, and said, That is the scale of my promise to you. He took Abram's small, earthly perspective and expanded it to a cosmic one. He was teaching Abram to measure the promise not by what he could see in his present circumstances, but by the infinite power of the one making the promise. In that profound moment, standing under the canopy of a million stars, something shifts in Abram's heart. He doesn't see a sun yet. He doesn't see the nation. He doesn't see the fulfillment. He sees God's faithfulness reflected in the heavens. And the Bible tells us something incredible. Abram believed the Lord, he credited it to him as righteousness. This is one of the most important verses in the entire Bible. What made Abram righteous in God's eyes? It wasn't his heroic deeds in battle. It wasn't his flawless character or his perfect obedience. It was his faith. It was his choice, in a moment of doubt and despair, to take God at his word, to trust the promise maker even when the promise seemed impossible. Righteousness, we learn here, isn't about being good enough, it's about trusting God enough. It's about trusting God enough, it is about looking at our own emptiness and then looking up at his fullness and believing that he can bridge the gap. But God isn't finished. He knows the human heart is forgetful. He knows that doubts can creep back in when the sun rises and the stars fade. So, he decides to formalize this promise in a way that Abram would deeply understand. He initiates a covenant. This isn't just a simple handshake or a verbal agreement. In the ancient world, a covenant was the most solemn, binding contract imaginable. God instructs Abram to bring several animals: a heifer, a goat, a ram, a dove, and a young pigeon. Abram cuts the larger animals in two and arranges the halves opposite each other, creating a path between them. This was the traditional way of sealing a covenant. The two parties would walk through the animal pieces together, essentially saying, "If I break this covenant, may I become like these animals." It was a life and death promise. As the sun sets, a deep, terrifying darkness falls over Abram, and he falls into a deep sleep. In this dreamlike state, God reveals a glimpse of the future to him, a future that includes hardship and slavery for his descendants in a foreign land, but also a future of deliverance and return to the promised land. God is being honest with Abram. The path ahead will not be easy. The promise will unfold through generations of struggle, but the outcome is certain. Then, as the darkness deepens, something extraordinary happens. Abram doesn't walk through the animal pieces. Instead, he sees a smoking firepot with a blazing torch passing between the pieces. What is this? This is God. The fire and smoke are symbols of his holy presence. In an act of pure, one-sided grace, God alone walks the path of the covenant. Think about what this means. God is taking the entire weight of the promise upon himself. He is essentially saying, Abram, your ability to keep this covenant is not the point. Your faithfulness is not what this rests on. My faithfulness is what guarantees this promise. If this covenant is ever broken, let the curse fall on me. It's a staggering display of God's commitment. He is binding himself to his own promise to Abram. That night, under the stars and through the fire, the future of a nation was sealed, not by human strength or political maneuvering, but by a divine promise sworn by God himself. It all began with one man, Abram, who dared to look past his own emptiness and believe in a God of impossible abundance. The story of Genesis 15 is a powerful reminder for all of us. We all have areas in our lives where we feel a deep sense of lack, where God's promises feel distant. We look at our circumstances and see impossibility. But God invites us, just as he invited Abram, to step outside, to look up, not necessarily at the stars, but at the cross, at the empty tomb, at the character of God revealed in Jesus. He invites us to see the covenant he made with us, sealed not with the blood of animals, but with the precious blood of his own Son. Abram's story teaches us that faith is not the absence of questions or doubts. Faith is choosing to trust God in the midst of them. It's bringing our honest, aching hearts to him and believing that his promise is greater than our problem, that his power is more real than our circumstances. The journey of faith begins and is sustained, not by our own strength, but by fixing our eyes on the one who is both our shield and our exceedingly great reward. Thank you so much for joining me today to explore this incredible chapter. If this story resonated with you, let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next journey into the depths of Scripture. See you next time.